G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here. This is a malt liquor video in the sense that this is Cooper's Stout. It's 6.3% alcohol and it's 3.7 standard drinks per 750ml bottle. And this is actually take two. So I'm really sorry. I've already drunk the 3/4 of a litre. I've got the 3.7 standard drinks inside of me, and camera malfunction. The first time I shot this movie, the bloody camera was on charge. 12 minutes into a 15-minute video, the battery was full, and when the camera decided the battery was full, it stopped filming. So I talked for 3.5 minutes or 2.5 minutes at the end, and ruined a perfectly good malt liquor video. So here we have the malt liquor video without me drinking the malt liquor. Sorry about that, Bike Messenger 7, old mate Earl. Now, I didn't even time the start of this thing, so let's say I've been running for 1 minute. 5, 10, 15. Yeah, alright, we'll see how we go. I want to talk about the myth of the tourist industry. Okay? Now, here we are at the start of the 21st century, as they call it. And for the last 20, 25 years, it's been perfectly obvious that sequential increasing advances in mechanisation and automation have given us a situation where it takes less and less people to actually grow the food and provide the services which industrial civilization requires. So here in Australia, there's 22 million of us, and between 2 and 3% actually live on the land engaged in agriculture to produce food and fibre. And pretty sure 80% of what they produce they export. Right? Wheat, wool, beef, mutton, like, it doesn't take a whole lot of people to produce what it requires, or what a civilization requires in terms of food. If you've got plentiful, cheap petroleum fuel, and if you've got plentiful, cheap electricity from burning coal. Okay, now that's what we've got. That's what we've had, and the energy's getting more expensive, and there's no more arable land, and the topsoil is degrading, and the rainfall's becoming less reliable, so the water is less plentiful, so it's becoming harder and harder and harder to provide your basic food and services. But we've still got a political leadership mentality that's geared to the idea that for the last 50 or 100 years the number of tourists every year has grown. The number of people who could afford to swan around the world farting kerosene so they could go somewhere and have a look at the quaint little locals and their amusing customs and traditions, that has grown every year. And here in Australia, I can remember once upon a time we were trying to attract the American tourists. And then we were trying to attract the Japanese tourists. And then we were trying to attract the Chinese tourists. But the idea is that you want somebody else to come halfway around the world so they can look at you and pay you to be you. That's what the tourist industry is about. And it occurs to me that here we are in the Shire of Glen Innes 7, and there are 10,000 people who live here. Now, 4,000 of the 10,000 people who live in the Shire have actually got a job. Everyone else is too young, or they're too old, or they're too disabled, or too sick, or they're too unemployable. Right? 4,000 people have a job. And here in Australia, if you've got a job, a proper job, not a casual job, a proper job, you get 4 weeks a year holiday pay, and you get 17.5% loading onto your holiday pay, so that you can afford to go away and you're not at work, so you're spending more money when you've got more time to spend the money in. So yeah, okay, 17.5% holiday loading. And I remember having a job, you know, back in the day. And the big thing that we used to talk about at lunch break and coffee break was what we were going to do in our holidays. We'd spend 11 months a year working to save up the money so that for 1 month a year we could go out and be the person that we wanted to be. And some people went camping, and some people went on a cruise ship, and some people flew to Aspen, Colorado and slid down a snowy mountain, you know, before global warming got rid of the snow. And some people went scuba diving on the Barrier Reef before fertiliser pollution from the runoff from the farmers killed the Barrier Reef. And, you know, different people did different things. My first year holidays as a student nurse, I went to Narromine Soaring Centre and spent 2 weeks living on an airfield. And I paid to be taught to fly sailplanes. And then I spent another week flying sailplanes for the fun of it. That's what people do on their holidays. People who have a job, they don't stay at home. They fuck off. They go somewhere else. Okay? So here I am in the Glen Severn Shire, and I know that every day 333.3 people who normally are at work in the Shire are on holidays. And where are they? They're not inside the Severn Shire, are they? They're not having a staycation. They're not doing what my grandfather used to do in the late 1940s or middle 1940s, when he'd close the doors on his blacksmith shop and he'd put up a deck chair in his backyard and he'd sit there and he'd watch his potato plants grow. For a week. He wasn't going to work. He was having a holiday. He was sitting on his ass, taking it easy. That was his holiday. He didn't go away. He kept on buying food and groceries in the local main street. He kept sustaining his local economy. He just didn't go to work. He had a holiday. Right? Not now. Oh, shit, no. Now people have got to go to Bali and come home with a multi-drug resistant, super different form of malaria or tuberculosis or a sexually transmitted infection. Right? Or they've got to go to England and look at the changing of the guard out the front of the Queen's house. Yeah? And it's cheaper to go skiing in New Zealand than it is here in Australia, if you're an Australian. It's amazing. It's really quite bizarre. So we have this tourist industry. And to break even, my local hometown has to sell 333 beds per day. Now, can they do that? Is it possible? Now, I've had a look around the town, right? Paid attention. 7 motels, average of 24 beds each, 24 rooms each, 2 beds per room, 336 beds in the motels. So you've got to have every motel full just to break even. It's not going to happen, is it? To help the moteliers out, you've got 5 pubs. And the pubs have got about 10 rooms each, with about 2 beds in each. So that's another 50 beds. All right? There's also 5 caravan parks. And most of the people, and 3/4 of the caravan park berths are full of permanent residents. So let's say another 50 beds there. So I make it 436 beds in the town. And if they've got 50% occupancy, that's 218, right? And basically it means that a little tiny country town on the crossroads of 2 highways, in average times, when you've only got 30% occupancy at the motels, the caravan parks are full of permanent residents and nobody stays in the pub unless the town is full, it's not breaking even on tourism. Not on selling a bed to somebody for the night. It seems to me that you've got to try and make it up with hamburgers and petrol. So we've got 12 restaurants, a la carte type restaurants, 40 fast food outlets, 40, and 6 fuel stops. All right? And that is what keeps the tourist industry alive. If you pull the petrol out of the equation, nobody is going to pedal their bicycle to the top of a mountain to have a holiday where there is no beach. If you pull the coal-fired electricity out of the equation so you can't get a cold beer, nobody's going to do it. So the tourist industry is a myth. There's no point having a museum to the memory of when regional Australia used to be a productive place. I'm sorry about that, but them's the facts. Right? The tourist industry is a myth. And if it's a myth here in Glen Innes, it's probably a myth in Emerville, 26 miles away, where they have a mining museum to the memory of when they could make a living as a tin miner. And it's probably also a myth in Deepwater, which is sort of north of here and east of Emerville, where they spent 10 years looking for a government grant to get a museum to the memory of when it was profitable to be a sheep farmer. Right? The tourist industry is a wibnif, a wouldn't it be nice if fantasy. It might even be a waft-am, a waste of fucking time and money. But anyway, that's enough from me. Ciao.